What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Leading Leaders. I'm here with another amazing leader, my very good friend, Sheldon McCoy. How about you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Man, I've lived in Seminole pretty much my whole life. I'm 33 years old, and this is what you're doing and everything. It's got me all excited. We were just talking about all this, and now we're getting kicked off. But man, I've been here pretty much my whole life. Grew up here, graduated from Seminole. I've kind of hopped around churches around here a lot until I found the church that I'm at now, which is my home. I stand firm behind that. When you really find a church that's home, it's super strong. The presence of God there is strong, and I get to go to church with your mom and dad, and that's a fun thing there, But I've been a part of this community ever since I can remember. Anything that's going on here, I try to plug in, man. That's basically how I get involved in anything. I just want to plug in and be a part of it.
Yeah, but it's ironic because that brings me to my first question to you. Have you always been in that servant's heart or servant's mindset your whole life?
As kids, no. As I got older, yes. A lot of that happened with my military background. I've been in the military for going on 15 plus years now, still doing it. And, I couldn't tell you when exactly in my life that I've always had a servant's mentality, but I can tell you once I had it, like I've never stopped. It's, everybody thinks about servitude as always just, it's easy stuff, right? Like it's opening the door for a lady when you're walking into the store, or helping a lady with her groceries when she's loading up her groceries, to, community events going on. It's, I try to model my life the best I can to Christ. As his leadership is that style. He had a servant's heart, and so that's just how I've always been, man. I think a lot of that comes from my mom and my grandpa growing up. A lot of that from my grandpa. He was very involved in community, and I think that's kind of a person I look up to a lot in that aspect, because he did so much. He worked for the fire department, worked for the hospital, worked for the police department, started the Seminole gospel scene here in town. He just was always wanting to do stuff to give back to other people. And then I met my wife, and her whole family, that's all they do, man. They care about this community so much, and they would literally give their shirts off their backs to people. So, when you marry into a family that brings that to the table too, it's amazing to get to be, you try to aspire to be like somebody all the time. And I'm constantly back and forth. Oh man, I got, my wife's uncle, great man, and I go to him with a lot, and then I have my best friend, Steve Quisenberry. I call Steve every day, but that's what we do, man. We bounce off of each other to aspire to be better, and I think God put all those people in my life for that purpose.
That's good. Yeah, I can't say that I've always had, servant's heart. And I think that me personally, I've had it, but, I shut it off for a long time, boxed up a lot of, my military was more turn off emotions than anything, but that's one of the things that I can proudly say that God has done in my life was, reignited that emotions to involve, because, like you said, God had a servant's heart. And, to me, that's the greatest way to show love, right? How can I show love better than, and let me help you with that. Let me help you with something that you might not be able to get done yourself. Let me help you out. And even if you can get it done yourself, it's a whole lot easier if I'm helping you, right?
For sure.
And that's one of the things that I find, like, especially men, me and you have talked about this before. Men have the hardest time asking for help, and I know for me, I'm one of those people.
I'm still that way. I'm
still that way too. Especially when it comes to, you ask my wife anything to do with fixing the house. Oh, I will not ask for help, even if I don't know what I'm doing. And but I honestly, even if we don't ask for help, knowing that we have those people in our life, like, hey man, let me help you with that. Oh, yeah, I would love your help, because I feel like God sticks those people in our lives for that reason, like you said, to lift that burden off of our shoulders, even when we don't even notice that it's there.
Well, and a lot of times, having a servant's heart and being able to do that for other people, man, it makes people want to do that for you. And then you'll find yourself, man, I can't tell you countless times I've had men in our men's group, I don't even get a chance to mention that we're doing something. And they're like, what do you need? What do you need? Like, let me help you out with that. Right. Because one, they probably know I'm too proud to ask for the help, but two, man, it's just when you incorporate that into your church body, man, people are hungry to do stuff right now. Yeah. I think that's so important right now is the world is at such a chaos and they're hungry for God. They may not know it, right? Like some of them, they don't realize they're hungry for God until they get a little taste, right? And then they're really hungry. And, you never can be full. It's always, you constantly got to be hungry. And I think a lot of that comes from being servants. When you show that to people, it makes them want more,
Yeah. I love the way you said that, because I've talked to somebody about that before, because that's one of the things that I love about having a relationship with God is you can never be full, right? And once you start getting filled up, you're like, oh, I want more, and you always just keep wanting more.
It's like grandma's banana pudding,
dude.
You just
can't ever get enough.
That's good.
It's amazing, and I love the way you put that, dude. That was very good. So honestly, I'm gonna go switch it up a little bit, and what would you call where would you say that you find yourself a best fit right now in any particular ministry? Like, where do you find that you spend the most time in ministry right
now? My marketplace ministry, honestly, I help out with several. You had Travis in here. CTO is a big one in this community right now. Our men's group at the church is booming. Man, after we get done with this tonight, that's exactly where I'm going. We've got Bible study tonight, and you got a room full of 30 dudes that are just pouring their hearts out, man. And that's hard for men to do. And when you get a room full of that, man, and the Spirit is just present, and I think people kind of, what I would say, kind of misunderstand the word of ministry. Like, I think when people hear the word ministry, they think, oh, I need to be in a pulpit, or, I need to be a worship leader. Man, I think every day everybody has a ministry, right? I love Kevin Harderman, one of my best friends, man. He talks about marketplace ministry. He cuts hair for a living, but guess what he does every single day when he's cutting hair? He's talking the Lord into people's life, right? And so I think, people really, when they hear the word ministry, they think like it's a title, right? And it's really not. It's who you are. I was sharing that with my wife today of people's giftings and what they get to do in the church. Sometimes, just holding the door open at church is a ministry. Feeding 100%. Kids donuts is a ministry. Decorating for holidays before an event happens at the church, that's a ministry. People cleaning the church up, that's a ministry, right? And so I don't know. I look at every day as I wake up as a ministry, and how I can just try to be that light. I could always perfect myself. I could always do better, right? But I think when you try, that's what leads people to conversation. You start talking about the goodness of God in your life. That's a ministry, right? And it's as simple as when you're eating dinner or breakfast or wherever you're at, and it could be you and me out in public, right? But we're talking about God and the person behind us. They want to know, they're hearing something that's great. Everybody loves the good news, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the world we're living in right now. And so that's just the invitation to bring people in and start saying, hey, let me tell you what God's done in my life. I mean, hey, if you don't have a church, just get in a church. You don't have to come to my church, but find a church that suits you. I think we get so caught up on whose church is better. Man, if they're preaching the word of God and the true gospel, and you feel like that's your home, then that's where you belong. And so the question was, where I feel like the ministry I'm most active in, I've got to say marketplace ministry, which is my everyday. I get to go to work and talk to people about God every day, no matter where I go. So.
Yeah. Hey, that's good, bro. Like, I have heard people put it that way, but I've never heard it named that before, marketplace ministry. That's good. And I 100% agree with you, bro. Like, I agree, because, people always try to put titles on everything, right? Mm-hmm. And all that, honestly, your title is just that. in itself. It's
Your
just
title is Israel Haney.
Yeah, right. It's but in all actuality, our biggest title is child of God.
Yeah.
And if I can live my life to the fullest, showing you through my life, not through my works, how I live, Christ, oh, bro, I've done the greatest ministry that I possibly can. Right. So I agree with you, dude. That's awesome. That was good. So again, why do you think fellowship and relationship in between fellow believers is such a hard thing to start? You know, I feel like nowadays it's one of the things that we really have to pry to actually open up to make a relationship instead of just a. So I say this all the time, and this will put more context on it. There's a difference in between knowing somebody and actually knowing somebody. Right. So I feel like to actually get to know somebody, we always have to pry so hard.
Right. Well, you know, fellowship is a relationship, right? Yeah. And I think when you look at a relationship, right, I think a lot of people, you know, there's a good book out there called Love and Respect, and it talks about seeing through the pink lens and through the blue lens. And instantly when people hear that, they think, you know, man versus woman, right? And that's really not the case. It's just the traits that the blue lens has and the traits that the pink lens have. And so the pink lens, it tends to be more the person who wants to talk about things, and then the blue lens is kind of more of the person that doesn't want to or doesn't want to initiate, right? And in all that, you know, fellowship and relationship, you know, you have to have that relationship. You know, what we're having right now, this is a relationship, and a relationship is a two-way street. I think people forget about that, right? You know, I hear people make the comment all the time, you know, like, oh, you know, your relationship's got to be 50-50. Well, no, the relationship has to be 100-100, right? And that's key. You know, I shared this with some of the youth a while back. You know, we talked about asking questions. I started off the service with asking questions about myself to see what the kids would know, right? And then, you know, obviously most of these kids aren't going to know some of my personal questions, but, you know, if you go ask my wife things about me, she's going to know, right? Because we have a relationship. She knows me, you know? And so, I think that's important with fellowship, because it is hard. You got to be willing to open up, right? Just talking about, like, with our men's group, you know, you got 30 dudes that are pouring their heart out. You know, the very first one, I was nervous as all get out, right? And I thought, these dudes are going to come in here, ain't nobody going to talk. And then the next thing you know, man, we're sharing our hearts, and it's great, you know? And so, I think it's a struggle just because people don't want to open up. And you could call that a manly thing. You could call it, you know, women sometimes don't want to talk about their problem, you know? And so, I think the struggle there too also is when you talk about, you look at other churches too, like, you know, I think religion gets in the way of a lot of that. People focus more on religion than they really look at, like, realism, right? And so, you know, you've come to several of my events, and I've tried to come to some of yours, and, you know, we've hosted CTO events out here. You know, it's just, I think once people get to know each other and it's comfortableness, right? And once you finally reach that breaking point of comfortableness, it's easier to do. But for some reason, man, people just, I don't know why. I don't know why people just won't open up. Me, on the other hand, I'll tell you anything you want to know, right? So it just, I think it has to do with the person too. You know, so.
Well, and I think that's why God puts people in certain places where they're at, right? Because, you know, me and you both go to different churches, but me and you have the same mentality to where I'm going to talk to you regardless, even if you don't want to talk to me.
We serve the same God.
Yeah. Like I don't care. Like if you're Assembly of God or, you know, non-denomination or Baptist, you know, and we're still gonna talk to each other, you know, and that's what I think is funny is you know, everybody. I mean, you've talked about this before. Is everybody gets stuck on the denominational thing, and in all actuality, is I'm a child of God and I love God completely, and if me and you can come in accordance on, we're here to worship God and give our word to God, and, you know, testify about what God's done in our lives. Why wouldn't I want to conversate with you about what God's done in my life?
The hardest thing to do is set aside differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, once people can set it, we can have disagreements, we can have differences, right? But the fact of the matter is, we serve a God that loves us and wants to have a relationship with us. And people have to be willing to set aside differences. But the big thing is you can set aside differences by what the Word of God says, right?
Yep.
And so, we're going to have mild disagreements. Sure, there people dig into theology and other things like that too that some people just don't believe in, right? But at the end of the day, like, you can come to a conclusion of what this says. Yeah. And so that's important, and that's what I think God has surrounded me with tons of people like yourself, like I've mentioned, Steve and Travis and Kevin and all the men in my men's group, right? Like, it's healthy to say, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I can read this thing 100 times and there's still going to be things I don't know, but I need people that have lived some of this, or experienced some of that to go and say, hey man, can you help me in this?
Yeah.
And I think, that just comes with the ability to be humble. You got to have that humility to admit, man, I just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so you got to come together and see. That's why God puts those people in your life.
Oh,
so you can,
man. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we kind of already hit on it, and I love how all of our questions are actually flowing with everything that's written down. So in what way do you think God is going to be using you to impact other future ministries that you see coming?
It's funny you should ask. So I'm actually in the process of starting seminary school. And so I've had it prophesied over me many times by different people, but the same prophecy of going out and just reaching other people and going into the nations. And, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, and I don't really care. I'm going to seek God's face in it, and I've gone for a year praying about, hey God, I felt like He's been tugging me to go into seminary school. And, a lot of times we pray and we don't get an immediate answer, and so you have to learn patience in that as well. And so a couple of days ago, we were talking to a buddy, and I said, all right, God, what do you want me to do in this season? Because we go through so many different seasons. And he said, now is your time. Went through a season a couple of months ago of an opportunity that I wanted to say yes to, and I said yes before I prayed about it. And then I saw God's face in all of that, and He said, man, that's not your season. This is you can't say yes to that. And so I had to turn that down, and it's hard to do, and so, but when you seek God's face and He gives you clear guidance on what He wants, He brings that forth to you. And so, as far as future ministries, man, I'm seeking God's face. I firmly believe, my wife and I, we took a trip to Paris last fall, and I shared with, Pastor Danny at our church, I said, man, where I was at, the region where I was, man, I don't feel the presence of God here like I do back home. And, and that's a struggle in Europe right now, is the presence of God over there. His presence is always there, but people stepping into the people, stepping into that presence. And then I shared with him, I said, man, I was walking with my wife, and I said, we passed by a church downtown, and man, it was like a vision from God was I was going to be standing outside of that church, sharing the word of God to people out there. And I shared that with Pastor Danny, and so it's really cool when you see that kind of stuff. And then when you come back home, people you've never met prophesying to you, saying, hey, you're going to go to the nations and you're going to preach, and so I'm by no means right now a preacher, but I'm growing in His word daily. And that may, people don't think about how long certain things, we look at visions on things and we think it's going to be instantaneously, when we do all that stuff. But, I was talking to Pastor Danny a while back about when they talked about merging churches, and it was a 10-year process. It took them that long, but they heard from God 10 years ago, and, and then it happened. And of course now that's where, me and your mom and dad, we all go to church out there now. So it's crazy to see how all that ties out. So future wise, answer your question, man, wherever God calls me. I don't know currently right now. Right now I just know he's got me in a growth stage. And so I'm going to grow in His word and go from there and just seek His face in it all.
That's good, bro. That's good, though. Man, I kind of missed this, honestly. I'm going to go back and we're going to dive back into this a little bit. And so earlier you said that people don't like to open up, and I just kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. Why do you think that it's so hard for people to open up to each other? Like, why?
Fear.
Yeah, you think
Fear. I think it's fear. Yeah, I mean, and it's really hard, especially to new believers, right? I've heard the statement, and I actually just texted this out the other day to our elders, just for encouragement. That's one of my marketplace ministries, right? I try to every Monday try to send some kind of words of encouragement or what God's saying or speaking to me, and fear gives you a what if mentality, right? But faith gives you an even if mentality.
Yeah.
So, and I think people are they're afraid to open up because what if they think of me this way, or what if they think of me that way, but a faith mentality, when you, especially for new believers, is going to go, man, I'm going to share my heart, even if they don't believe in it or whatever, or, I'm going to share it even if, it costs me, I think that's the biggest thing, man. People are so afraid of everybody else's opinions,
Yeah.
I heard, golly, what's the guy that, he has talk show hosts. Anyways, he made the comment, other people's opinion about you shouldn't matter. It's none of your business, And so, I wish people would get that way, man. I think we live in a world where people are so worried about the they. What are they going to think?
Yeah.
I got people in my family that worry about that so much, man. They said this, or they're going to say this. Well, let them say it. Like at the end of the day, if what you're doing is godly, they're going to say it either way. So you might as well be godly about it.
But and I was that way for a long time, especially and that's one of the things that I struggled with was especially when they said it again.
Yeah, see, there it is.
Especially when they diagnosed me with anxiety, depression, and all that stuff, and I was like, oh well, I got it. They told me that I had it, and in all actuality, when you actually look at it, I'm not what you say I am. Right. And once we actually take control of that message, that's one of the things I shared at the last Man Up event that we did was, God's delivered me from my stuff. So I'm not anxiety. I'm not depression. I'm the child of God that was brought from anxiety. I'm the child of God that was brought through depression. So now I'm able to minister to somebody that is in those stages, right?
That's good.
So I'm not who you say I am. I'm who God says I am, regardless of what it looks like to you. I'm who God says I am. And that's one of the things, and I agree with you, dude. Fear is, one of our worst enemies, and the battles in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets stuck in their own mind and stuck in the cage of what we even think of ourselves, right? I hate what I see in the mirror, and I've been stuck there before too. I hate who I see in the mirror. You're not doing anything, stuck in that depressive state of, you're not going anywhere. What are you doing? And then God was like, but if you just do what I ask you to, you'll never have to worry about that.
Well, and we live in a world of where it's in your hand, right? People are in their phone constantly, and they, I literally just had this conversation with my wife this afternoon on the way back from the city. You become what you speak into your life, right? Yep. And the same way with your kids or people you love, like you tell a person, man, you're an idiot, just joking around, right? But you tell them, man, you're an idiot. Well, eventually that person is going to believe that they're an idiot. So I'm very big on, I tell people all the time, and it's something I work on a lot, is you got to be careful on how you say what you say, because it will become reality to certain people, right? And you mentioned your anxiety. So I told my wife, I said, I had anxiety, went through all that. And I had a huge spell, man, and I didn't know what was going on, right? And so, but when you get rid of the thing that's tied to your anxiety, and you put in the godly things, the music you listen to, the podcast you're listening to, what you're digging into, the books you read, are they pointing you to the Word of God? It's like a bank, right? What you deposit in you is what's going to come out, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what you tell yourself is a deposit, right?
Yeah.
And so self-worth is a big thing, man.
It is.
And I think once you can learn to respect yourself, then you can go far with that.
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things I think that people, a lot of people look at is like, man, how do I even, everybody looks at self-love wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's like, well, self-love is I have to be narcissistic,
right.
And that's not what self-love is. Self-love is I have to love myself enough to know that all of this other bull crap that I'm doing is not what's good for me, and this stuff is.
Right.
That's what self-love is. Self-worth is, diving in the word is better for me than diving into TikTok.
Right.
That's self-love, self-worth. And I think people get so miscued by their perception of self-love and self-worth. But then again, we don't, I say we as a whole, we're not diving in on that, right?
Because it's hard. People don't want to dive in because it's hard, right? Yes. It's easy to give into all the bullcrap, as you call it, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to do that because it's fun, it's exciting, it's adventurous, it's everything the flesh desires, right? Yeah. And I think people look at us, man, and they see us as Christians, and like, oh, well, they got it all put together, and it's look at them, they're happy-go-lucky, man. And I'm like, man, this has been the best 2 years of my life, these last 2 years, right? But it's also been the most absolute hardest. But that's okay because it's worth it, right? That's the journey. People don't see the journey, right?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, man, I think that's the hardest reason why people don't dig into the word. And again, it goes back to that question you asked about why people don't open up, because it's hard. It's not easy. It's not an easy process, right? Yeah. There's suffering and there's pain in that, right?
Having to dig back in old wounds,
absolutely.
Yeah. Man, I believe that, dude. I agree with that 100%. But that's one thing that if I could say anything, especially because I've been diving into a lot of men's ministry, youth ministry, and if anything that I could impart to men and youth is, man, you guys, like, we cannot let ourselves just let that fester inside,
right.
Because it's not going to just affect us.
Right.
Men, it's affecting your family.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I hold it in and I'm holding it back and not letting them see it doesn't mean it's not affecting my family. Yeah. Kids, guess what? Now you're holding it in your whole life, and now it's going to affect your future family, your future relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one of the things that I see is huge in ministry, in our lives, as Christians, is that we have to push that. We have to, and I say push it. Let me rephrase that. We have to show that in our lives that it's okay to open up and be bold about your stuff, be able to talk about your things and not worry about the way, like you said, people looking at you all like, oh, wow, he did that. People looking at you like, oh, well, you came from that? Yeah, you're right. I did came from that, but guess what? That's not who I am
anymore.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah. I might have been that person before in the past, but that ain't me no more.
Well, and so many people get caught up on when they think about, like, especially people who become believers, they're like, well, the past is the past, and it is, but it's also, you can, I shared this the other night, you can use your past as a foothold, not a stumbling block, right?
Yeah.
And so, just anxiety, we have an avenue now to talk people through that, addiction. If you ever had that addiction, and you've overcame it, it's not a stumbling block now. It's a stepping stone, and you can utilize. People need to hear that it's okay to not be okay, right?
Yeah.
And again, everything goes back to the word, and so I don't know, man. It's just you gotta encourage people, man. Everybody gets so caught up on people's past, and and it sucks. People have some crappy past, There's things that I used to think, man, I'd be so ashamed if my kids ever found that out. But at the same time, like, in due time, they need to know. They need to know Dad went through certain things in high school that he doesn't want you guys to go through it.
Yeah.
I had to suffer through that, so you don't have to. So I can tell you the goods and the bads and the in-betweens, right?
Mm.
And so I think people need to quit worrying about making mistakes, right? That's the key right there. Is I think if sometimes some of the greatest lessons learned are from mistakes made. The key is when you make a mistake, what are you going to do about it? Who are you going to look to and make a mistake? Because when my kids make a mistake, I don't want them to feel like they need to hide their mistake and not be able to talk about it. I want them to come to dad and say, "Hey, Dad, I did this and I messed up and I'm sorry." Right? It's the same way with our Christian faith. It's the exact same way, right? Now we don't go out and do things intentionally on purpose. I call that greedy grace, right? Yeah. But I'm gonna do things between talking about my future in ministry. I'm gonna mess up, dude. I'm absolutely 100% gonna mess up. But I think when you realize you're going to, it makes it easier to overcome that mess up. And so I don't know if I could be an encouragement to people or be something to look at. I mean, yeah, look at my mistakes, look at my history. I mean, we're literally sitting in a place that you guys are turning into a church that was a bar that I used to go get drunk at, and people are going to be like, "I can't believe you just said you got drunk on a podcast." But they need to know it's real. We go through that. That is my past. I did that stuff, but I found somebody who paid the price for that. Right. Yeah. And now I get to walk with him side by side every day. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
I know, same thing, bro. Like it's, if I cannot preach the truth to you, what am I doing?
Right.
If I can't tell you, oh yeah, I'm now from December 4th on my birthday, I'll be 3 years sober, no alcohol. Yeah. If I can't be open and honest with you about that, what am I doing? God took that away from me, and guess what? Now when I gave that down to God, I don't even have that feeling anymore.
Right. People need to figure out a way to understand and feel His grace.
Yeah.
That's the key right there, right? I look at the adulterous woman, casting stones. The only person that truly could have casted stones at that time was Jesus, but He showed grace. He could have practiced everything the law said that you could do. He could have cursed or whatever He wanted to do, but He humbled and showed grace, and I think once a person truly gets that real taste of grace, man, it's unfathomable, man. You just can't, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Man, I don't want to end it, but I'll wrap it up with this last question. And I want you to really dive into what advice would you give somebody who is going to start out in ministry?
So I think a lot of people think of ministry, we tie leadership, leaders leading leaders and whatnot. If I could give any advice, leadership is not a position. It's an act, right? I don't have to be called pastor. I don't have to be called men's group leader. I don't need any of that, right? My advice would be just be a model, be something that people aspire to be. We all grew up with somebody that we aspired, right? My grandpa was one of them. My baseball coach growing up in high school, one of the, all these things that we do, like, it's because we aspired at some point, right? You look at all these great leaders growing up, and all the good leaders that I ever aspired to be like were followers, and they're not afraid. Jesus got on His hands and knees. Jesus was in the mix of everything. He didn't just, sometimes He said, go and do this, but it was never with the intention of go do this because I don't want to, right?
Yeah.
It was go do this so I can show you something, right? We do this the same way with our kids, right? Hey, don't stick your fork in the electrical outlet, you try, so my advice would be, man, when you get into ministry, always, no matter what you do, seek God's face in what you do. That would be the number one advice I can give you. And probably my number two advice is don't get caught up on the title. Yep. Get caught up in the action, right? Everything I do is just because I want to be a part of it. It's not that I want to lead it. It's not that I want that title. I just want to be a part of it, man.
Yeah.
That's how I am. That's how I've always been my whole life. Now, does leadership abilities come from that? Of course, but I would just never focus on the title. I would just focus on the action, truthfully.
Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. And I love the way you said that. And, I will definitely attribute a lot of that is how you grew up and how you've grown through the military, for sure, because that's one of the things that I will give to the military that I've grown up in on that aspect was that one of my You know, one of my favorite squad leaders I ever had was a guy that would never do anything that he wasn't going to show you or do with you.
Yeah, don't ever ask your guys to do something they're not willing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we worked together for a couple of years. You know,
Yeah.
if I asked you guys to stay late, I didn't go home. Right? You gotta be willing to do what you're asking the people who are going to follow you to do. So, and you know, a lot of times it goes back to what we've said at the first of it. You know, if you lead by example and you're just willing to be that vessel or that person of hope and help, right? People see that and they aspire to do it, you know. And so the next thing you know, they're in the mix of doing stuff. They're involved in an organization, you know, and that would be another very big word of advice for that is get involved.
Yeah.
Figure something out, you know, like if you want to paint paintings for Christ or serve donuts for Christ, just get involved. And then, you know, and if that's not enough, get involved in something else again, you know. That's always been my motto. You know, I've always tried to just get involved with whatever I can. You know, sometimes there's things that I don't need to be involved in, right?
Yeah, you jump in and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, not for me, not for me. Yeah, so.
But hey, dude, I 100% agree with that because, you know, I feel like a lot of times, you know, people are like, man, God, just use me, but they're standing on the sidelines.
Right.
When God's like, hey, I need a wide receiver out here, but you're just like, no.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah, bro. This happened yesterday. Dude from our church, we went to help out another church, and I've known who he is, you know, and then we get up here and I'm like, dude, I told him this morning, I said, dude, you're a godsend. Where have you been? Like, but he's just that quiet little mouse in the background, you know, and I'm just like, bro, like you need to be out there, you know, and man, again, don't be afraid to mess up. Sometimes you're going to step into some things that you probably shouldn't have been in, right? But you're never going to know, you know, and learn from that, you know, but get involved, man. That'd be, honestly, I take back everything I said. That'd be my number one is see God's face and get involved. That's the direction you need to figure it out.
All right. I love it, dude. Thank you again for being on
no problem,
here,
man.
bro.
Absolutely.
I loved having you on, and it was an honor for you to be on here, bro.
Man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Come back next week, guys. I'll have another amazing leader on here, and I hope y'all guys are blessed.